I'm Kai's. No one remembered my birthday. Not even a text, not even a candle. My mother looked me in the eye and said, "It's just a birthday. Grow up." But 1 week later, she messaged me like nothing happened, asking for $2,900 to fund my brother's party. That's when I realized I was never family. I was just their wallet with a pulse. So I sent her exactly $1 and a gift she'll never forget. What happened next? She screamed loud enough to wake the past. Before we dive in, tell me, have you ever felt invisible in your own family? Drop a comment. I read every single one. I woke up to the sound of Belle's tail tapping against the hardwood floor. She always greeted the morning like it was a celebration. I wished I could say the same. Today was my birthday. I stared at the ceiling a moment longer before reaching for my phone on the nightstand. There was a gentle hope, small but stubborn, like maybe this year would be different. Maybe someone remembered. I tapped open the family group chat. Dad, Mom, Frank, Cora, the same people I'd been cooking for and covering emergencies for over a decade. I typed simply, "Morning, everyone. Hope you're all doing okay." Sent. Read by none. I sat up, hugging my knees, as the fall sun pushed through the blinds. My apartment was quiet. Too quiet for a birthday, but not unfamiliar. Still, I brushed the feeling off, stood up, and shuffled into the kitchen. The cabinets clicked open with that same old loosened hinge. Belle circled by my feet as I pulled out 2 eggs and a slice of rye bread. My birthday breakfast. No cake, no candles, just simple, just me. From the back of the shelf, I pulled out a mug I hadn't used in a while. Pale blue, chipped near the handle, with faded lettering that read, "One day you'll thank me." My mother gave it to me when I was 15, right after a particularly brutal school year, where I'd worked myself sick, helping around the house, and keeping my grades perfect. I remembered asking her what it meant back then. She had scoffed. "You're lucky to even have that," she said. No one ever gave me a mug. And I had held on to it like it meant something. As I sipped coffee from it now, the warmth didn't comfort me the way it used to. It just reminded me how long I'd been hoping for gratitude that never came. I glanced at the phone again. Still nothing. No pings, no calls, no happy birthday, not even a lazy emoji. I opened Mom's chat directly. I hovered for a second, debating if I was overthinking, if asking would seem childish, but the silence was suffocating. I typed, "Hi, Mom. Just wondering if you all forgot today's my birthday." Sent. The reply came minutes later. "It's just a birthday, Kais. Grow up." That was it. Not even punctuation. Not even my name spelled with warmth. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering, then locking the screen. It shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. For years, I had organized birthdays for every one of them. I'd baked Frank's triple-layer chocolate monstrosities in July heat waves. I'd hosted surprise parties for Cora, even when I was broke. I helped Dad when he forgot Mom's big 60th and made sure she had flowers, candles, and a dinner reservation. But me, my birthdays were always the same. A text 2 days late, a generic Facebook post, if that. And yet, every year, I kept believing. Maybe just this one year. By afternoon, I'd taken Belle on a long walk, hoping the movement would keep the ache at bay. She chased squirrels. I chased reasons not to cry. I tried to keep busy, washed the dishes, folded laundry, scrolled through a few birthday messages from coworkers I barely talked to. One even said, "Hope your family spoils you today." I didn't reply. By the time the sky darkened into that orange and silver twilight Ohio gets in October, I was sitting on the couch with Belle nestled into my side, her head heavy on my thigh. The apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and wet leaves from the candle burning across the room. Still no message, still nothing. I picked up the mug again. It was cold now. The coffee had gone bitter. I looked at it like I was staring at someone who had lied to me. One day, I whispered, barely hearing myself. Then I walked to the sink and set the mug down. Not harshly, just finally. I didn't finish the coffee. That night, I didn't light a candle, didn't make a wish. I tucked into bed earlier than usual. Belle curled beside me. The only soul who noticed today mattered. Sleep was slow. My mind kept tracing years of birthdays, where I gave and gave and gave and got nothing in return, not even acknowledgement. How did it take me this long to realize silence is also a choice? At 6:42 the next morning, a bright notification buzzed across the screen. I blinked groggily and reached for the phone. Group chat $1, $900 each for Frank's party. Send it by Friday. No, hello. No, how's everyone doing? Just that. A demand, like always. As if I were some walking bank account. As if yesterday hadn't even existed. I stared at the message. My jaw tensed, my breath stilled. Belle shifted beside me, as if sensing something had changed. I'd been quiet for too long. Not this time. I didn't move for a long time. The phone was still glowing in my hand from the message about Frank's party. The $2,900 request staring back at me like it was normal, like I was just some nameless donor in the background of their celebrations. I placed it face down on the nightstand and sat there, legs crossed under the quilt, Belle breathing softly at my feet. I should have expected it. Still, something inside me had hoped that maybe someone would notice the silence yesterday, that someone would text a belated happy birthday, or at least realize they'd skipped over me. But no, just a demand for money. Again. When I picked up the phone an hour later, I saw someone else had chimed in on the group thread. My cousin Trisha had sent a meme, Frank's face photoshopped onto a tuxedoed cartoon man holding balloons with big glitter text that read, 40 and fabulous. Don't be cheap, y'all. Cheap. That word stung in a way I didn't expect. As if the last 10 years of being the one they could always lean on didn't count. I paid off Mom's medical bills. I co-signed Frank's first car loan. I covered Cora's first month's rent when she moved out at 19, crying over some high school breakup. Cheap. I closed the chat. In the kitchen, I went through the motions, refilled Belle's bowl, poured myself lukewarm coffee from the pot I'd forgotten about. I wasn't really hungry, but I sat down anyway and stared out the window while the trees shifted in the morning wind. I thought back to Frank's 36th birthday 4 years ago. I'd flown back from Chicago just to be there, stayed up past midnight, hand-cutting little chalkboard signs, cooking his favorite bourbon brisket from scratch. I spent 2 days prepping, and when he arrived, all he did was throw his arms around Mom and say, "You really went all out." Later that night, they surprised him with a new SUV in the driveway. Meanwhile, I went home with leftover potato salad and a half-used roll of duct tape. No thank you, not even a text. I stood up and walked back to the bedroom, pulled open the bottom drawer of my nightstand, where I kept a few old envelopes and cards. I grabbed my checkbook, but paused. No, not this time. Instead, I opened my banking app. My fingers didn't tremble. They moved with an odd calm. I entered the amount, $1. Under memo, I typed, "Happy birthday, Frank," from the cheap one, I hit send. Seconds later, a new message lit up from Mom. This time, directly to me, not in the group thread. What is this? Are you serious? I didn't answer. Instead, I slid the drawer beside my bed, opened further, reached under the stack of blankets, and pulled out a faded file box labeled in red ink Archive. It was something I'd started years ago, when I realized no one else in the family seemed to remember the things I did, the things I gave up. They called me too sensitive when I said I felt overlooked, said I imagined things when I mentioned the patterns. So, I started saving them. Old birthday cards I never received, voicemails from Mom praising Frank's leadership skills and calling Cora her pride and joy. A photo from Thanksgiving 2 years ago, everyone sitting at the table except me, who had taken the photo and was cropped out when it went on social media. Receipts, screenshots, even a copy of the wire transfer document from when I sent $3,000 to Dad to cover an emergency pipe burst. Money I never got back, and they never mentioned again. I sifted through the papers, slowly, methodically, like someone piecing together a puzzle. Only they knew how to finish. I carried everything to my desk. My laptop blinked awake, the screensaver, shifting to an old picture of Belle in the snow. I created a new folder, titled it without hesitation, For the Ones Who Forgot. Inside, I opened a blank document. I wasn't sure yet what it would become. A letter, a slideshow, a legal file. I didn't know, but I knew I needed to lay it out. If not for them, then for me. Line by line, I began to type. February 14th, 2016. Flew home on short notice to drive Mom to her colonoscopy after Cora couldn't get off work. July 2020. Wired Frank $500 after he lost his debit card. Never repaid. December 2021. Bought gifts for the entire family when Mom said, "Let's keep it small this year." No one else brought anything. As I typed, the quiet anger in me didn't grow louder. It settled. It sharpened. Midway through building the file, my phone buzzed again. "Mom, please don't embarrass us. It's Frank's big day." No apology. No acknowledgement that I'd turned 36 alone. Just control. I stared at the message. Then I leaned back in my chair and let the smallest smile cross my face. I whispered, almost to myself, "Oh, I won't embarrass you. I saved the document. You'll do that just fine, on your own." The sun dipped beyond the line of trees, outside my window. Soft, orange light bleeding across the walls. I hadn't turned on the overheads yet. I didn't need brightness tonight. Just the candle on the table flickering beside my plate. Leftover stew, barely warm. The kind of dinner you eat out of obligation, not hunger. Belle lay curled in the corner, one paw over her nose. The room was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional groan of old pipes settling in the walls. I lifted my phone thumb, hovering over the notification from my mom. A voice message. I tapped it without thinking. Her voice poured into the room. "Family is about showing up, Kais. You never do, so don't act all hurt when you feel left out. You make choices, and choices have consequences." I stared at my plate, then pushed it away. My appetite, which was already thin, vanished altogether. So that's what she thought. That I didn't show up. That I chose the distance. A slow ache started to bloom in my chest. Not from the words themselves, but from the way they mirrored what I'd heard for years. Not directly, not always out loud, but through glances, exclusions, the way their joy skipped past me, like I wasn't in the room. I got up and walked over to the shelf by the window. There, nestled between two worn paperbacks and an old ceramic vase I'd made in college, sat a framed photo. Our family gathered around the fireplace one Christmas. Everyone was smiling. Everyone but me, because I wasn't in it. I remember that day. I took the picture. Frank had asked, "You mind being the photographer? Kay, you're good with angles." And like always, I said yes. It had snowed heavily that week. I'd driven 5 hours from Columbus on icy roads just to make it back for Christmas Eve. I arrived with handmade gifts, each one wrapped in craft paper twine, and tiny dried oranges I'd prepared weeks ahead. Thoughtful, meaningful. They gave me a bag of off-brand lotions from the clearance bin at the drugstore. No tag, no card. I remember Mom saying, "You always like this kind of stuff, right?" That wasn't the only memory. I walked slowly back to the desk, sat down, and pulled my legs up onto the chair. From the drawer beside me, I slid out one of my old journals. I hadn't opened it in years. The leather cover was cracked around the edges, but the pages inside were intact, filled with pieces of me I'd hidden even from myself. I flipped through them until one page stopped me cold. It was written in green ink, my favorite pen back then. If love is only loud for one child, then silence becomes the lullaby for the rest of us. I didn't even remember writing it, but reading it now, it hit like truth carved into stone. This erasure, this invisibility, it hadn't happened all at once. It had crept in, normalized itself, conditioned me to expect less, to apologize for even asking. A birthday when I was 12. I came home from school and found leftover cake from Frank's party 3 days earlier. His name still on it in blue icing. No candles, no song. High school graduation. I looked out into the audience, scanning rows of parents and siblings. Mine weren't there. Later, Mom said, "We didn't want to cancel our Tahoe trip." You understand, right? I told her I did. Because back then, I still wanted her to love me. But I didn't understand. Not really. Not until now. I closed the journal and pushed it aside, then turned to my laptop. The folder was still open for the ones who forgot. I added a new item, a scan of a picture from a summer picnic. Everyone lined up holding sparklers. I wasn't in it either. I had taken that one too. Then I opened a saved voicemail from last year. My mother's voice, cheerful and proud. "Frank is really stepping up, Kais. He's the future of this family. You know, he just gets it." I clipped that audio and dropped it in. It wasn't rage that moved me anymore. It was something steadier, quieter, a knowing. I was never going to be their chosen, but I could choose myself. I could choose to remember what they tried to forget. I leaned back and rubbed my temples. Outside, the wind had picked up. Leaves scraped softly against the window pane. Then I remembered something. In the bottom drawer of my dresser, buried beneath old letters and tax forms, there was an envelope. I hadn't opened it. It was from years ago. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable, Granddad. He died the winter after I turned 25. We weren't particularly close, but we understood each other in the way quiet people often do. I left my chair and padded barefoot across the room. The drawer groaned as I pulled it open, and there it was, cream-colored, a little yellowed around the edges, my name written in firm, slanted script. I sat back down, envelope in hand, heart beating just a little louder now. Whatever was inside, it had waited all these years. And suddenly, I was ready to read it. I held the envelope for a long time before opening it. The next morning, sunlight slipped quietly through the blinds, tracing lines across the kitchen floor, like careful handwriting. I'd barely slept, just lay in bed with the envelope beside me, afraid of what it might say, and maybe more afraid of what it wouldn't. But eventually, After pouring a small mug of coffee and sitting down at the kitchen table, I slid my finger under the seal. It opened clean, like it had been waiting patiently all these years. Inside was a single folded letter, a small brass key taped to the bottom corner, and a printed sheet that looked like bank details. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. His handwriting was neat, tight loops, and careful spacing, just like the notes he used to slip into our Christmas cards when I was little. If you're reading this, it means you've had enough of being last. You were never invisible to me, Kais. I blinked, let the words settle. I've watched you more than you ever knew. Watched you give and give while others took the credit. Watched you wash the dishes. After birthdays, no one celebrated for you. Watched you sit quietly while your brother was handed the microphone again and again. I should have said something, but you wouldn't have heard me. Not until you started listening to yourself. I paused the edges of the page, blurring through the heat in my eyes. This world has a habit of telling gentle girls to be grateful they're not hit. That silence is peace. But Kais, silence is not peace when it means your name disappears. He ended the letter with a sentence that felt like a warm hand on my shoulder. Use what I left for you when you finally decide to live like you matter. I turned to the second page, a printed account summary from Ohio River Community Credit Union, a savings account opened over 12 years ago in my name, steadily added to. $50 here, $200 there, and now $47,000. $47,000. It wasn't the money that broke me. It was that someone had been saving space for me. Quietly, steadily, without fanfare, without permission. I pressed the brass key to my palm. It was cool, solid, with a tiny number etched into the side. Maybe a safe deposit box. Maybe something else. I didn't know. I didn't care. For now, it was enough just knowing I had been seen. I thought back to the last time I saw him, at Thanksgiving, years ago. Everyone was loud buzzing around the kitchen, arguing over stuffing. I'd brought homemade cranberry sauce. No one touched it. Granddad stood in the corner, watching it all. And when I passed by to say goodbye, he reached out and grabbed my hand. He held it a second too long. Did he know even then that I'd need something to hold on to later? I sat there for another 10 minutes, trying to collect myself. Belle had wandered over, resting her chin on my foot, like she knew something had shifted. Eventually, I got up, wiped my face, and went to the living room. My laptop still sat open from the night before. The scanned family photo was on the screen, the one I wasn't in the one I took. I stared at it for a moment, then opened my private blog. It wasn't public, just a quiet little place I used to collect memories no one else asked about. I uploaded the photo, typed a caption. Guess who took this photo? Hint, it wasn't the golden child. I didn't expect anyone to see it. It wasn't for them. It was for me. A soft ding pulled my attention back to my phone. Unknown number. I let it ring once, then twice, then hit answer. Hello. There was a pause, then a voice, sharp, familiar, and already angry. You think this is funny? It was Frank. Frank's voice was cold, but not nearly as cold as what I was about to say next. I think what's funny, I said evenly, is how nervous you sound over a caption and a photo. He didn't reply at first. I could hear him breathing sharp through his nose. You better take that down. People are asking questions. I almost laughed. People were asking, since when did anyone in our family care enough to ask? I didn't name anyone, I replied. If someone feels exposed, maybe they should ask themselves why. Then I hung up. I stood in the kitchen for a moment, staring at the floor. Belle had wandered in, and was looking up at me like she sensed something stirring underneath the quiet. I grabbed my phone again, not to call back, but to open a folder I hadn't touched in weeks. It was buried deep in my gallery under an album titled They Forgot Me. Every screenshot was a little wound, a small, silent dismissal. I tapped one. Family dinner at Mom's Friday. Frank had sent it. The others all replied and see you then and thumbs up. I never got that message. Then another. Thanks for the $3,000 for Lily's bridal shower. Kai's. Yeah, I hadn't sent anything. I had simply not said no fast enough the last time Lily hinted she needed help. And now, my name was listed like a donor. Another one made my stomach twist. We're booking Dad's surprise cruise. $2,400 each. We put your name down already, Kai's. Hope that's okay. I'd sent back a single-word reply. Sure. I told myself it was easier that way. Less drama, less guilt. But now, looking at the stream of texts, like pieces of a puzzle, I saw what I hadn't let myself admit. They didn't forget me. They used me. Every contribution they credited to me wasn't gratitude. It was a transaction. They didn't want me at the table. They wanted my wallet. Back then, I didn't speak up. I thought maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just timing or a misunderstanding. So I started saving them. Not to throw in their faces. To prove to myself that I wasn't crazy, that my absence wasn't a coincidence. It was convenient. I walked over to my laptop and powered it on. As the screen lit up, I pulled open a hidden folder, tucked under layers of innocuous names. Inside were PDFs, organized by month, each one cataloging conversations, receipts, and Venmo requests I'd paid without acknowledgement. One was titled August Lily's Shower. Another, October Cruise Planning. I clicked open one of them. It was a screenshot of a group text where they were planning Christmas without me, again, and below it a photo of the gift receipt I'd emailed Frank when he asked me to send something classy for Mom from all of us. He'd asked 3 days before the holiday. No signature, just my credit card. I leaned back in my chair. This wasn't about one bad moment. It was a pattern, a rhythm of quiet rejection. I wasn't dramatic. I was just done, pretending not to notice. I opened my browser and navigated to a quiet blog platform I'd used in college. My old username was still active, Marigold Unsaid. No one in my family knew it. I created a new post, typed, "When your family wants your money, but not your presence, is it still family?" I paused, then added, "How many dinners would you pay for just to be left off the guest list?" And I clicked publish. There was no anger in me. Not really. Just the quiet heat of something waking up. I closed the lid of my laptop and stood to stretch. My phone buzzed. I picked it up. Venmo from Mom, $2,900. Caption for Frank's party. Don't be difficult. I stared at the screen for a long time. And that's when I knew silence wasn't protection. It was participation. That evening, after I'd sent my mother exactly $1 with a memo that would haunt her, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment. The city lights outside cast long shadows across my living room floor. I'd turned off all the lights except for a single lamp in the corner, its warm glow barely reaching where I sat cross-legged on the couch. My phone had been buzzing intermittently for the past hour. I'd silenced it after the 5th call from various family members. The notifications piled up on my lock screen like digital stones being thrown at my window. 12 missed calls, 47 unread messages. Mom, answer your phone. Frank Mom's having a breakdown. Cora, what did you do? I picked up the phone and scrolled through the group chat without opening it. Even from the preview, I could see the chaos unfolding. Screenshots of my blog post were being shared, accusations flying. Mom had apparently posted something on Facebook. I could see Aunt Carol's name pop up repeatedly in the thread. Curiosity finally won. I opened Facebook. There it was, posted an hour ago on Mom's timeline. Some daughters are raised to be grateful. Some turn into snakes. After everything we sacrificed, our daughter left us sick, starving, abandoned. Pray for us. The post already had over 100 comments. Some offered prayers. Others, people I barely knew, hurled judgment like stones. Ungrateful brat one read, "Parents give you life, and you spit on them." Another sneered. For a second, my hand shook so hard, I almost dropped the phone. Belle noticed patting over to rest her head on my knee. I stroked her fur absently, forcing myself to breathe. This was their playbook when confronted with truth. They painted themselves as victims to anyone who would listen. I scrolled through the comments more carefully now, but something interesting was happening. Between the harsh judgments were other voices. Didn't her daughter pay for their bills for years? I remember seeing Kai's shoveling their driveway every winter while they sat inside. Funny how now she's suddenly the villain. The tide wasn't fully turned, but cracks were showing. People remembered things. Small things. Things that didn't match the narrative my parents were spinning. I set the phone aside and walked to my desk. The folder for the ones who forgot was still open on my laptop. I'd been building it for years, never knowing exactly what I'd do with it. Now I knew. I created a new document, clean and simple. No anger, no accusations. Just facts. At the top, I typed, "The truth about family. Support. A timeline." Then I began laying it out year by year. Every payment, every sacrifice, every moment I'd shown up when they needed me. I included screenshots of bank transfers, copies of checks, even old text messages asking for just a little help this month. 2016, $3,000 for Mom's medical bills. 2017, $200 for Frank's car repairs. 2018, $500 for Dad's emergency surgery. 2019, $2,400 for new appliances after theirs broke. 2020, 2023, monthly support averaging $800. The list went on. By the time I finished, the total was staggering. Over $75,000 in the last decade alone. And that didn't include the emotional labor, the missed opportunities, the birthdays I'd organized, while mine went unnoticed. I didn't add commentary. I didn't need to. The numbers spoke for themselves. I saved it as a PDF and uploaded it to my blog with a simple title, "Since We're Talking About Who Abandoned Who." Within minutes, the views started climbing. People were sharing it. The same people who'd been asking questions in Mom's comment section now had answers. My phone rang again. This time, I recognized the number. Tyler, my cousin. The only one who'd ever really seen what was happening, but had stayed quiet to keep the peace. "Jesus Kais," he said when I answered. "You really went there." "I told the truth," I said simply. "That's all." There was a long pause. Then, good. It was about time someone did. Sexy cool. Part 5. The Truth Emerges. The next morning arrived with an unusual stillness. No angry texts, no missed calls. The silence should have been peaceful, but it felt like the eye of a storm. I knew my family well enough to recognize when they were regrouping, planning their next move. I made coffee and sat by the window watching Columbus wake up. The leaves had turned brilliant orange and red carpeting the sidewalks below. Belle curled up at my feet occasionally glancing up as if checking on me. Then my phone buzzed. Not a family member this time. It was Mrs. Patterson, our old neighbor from Ridgeway. "Honey, I saw your post. I've kept quiet for too many years, but I have something you should see. Can you meet me?" 2 hours later, I was sitting across from her at a small diner on the outskirts of town. She looked exactly as I remembered: silver hair, pulled back kind eyes, behind wire-rimmed glasses. But there was something different in her expression. Determination. She pulled out an old photo album and flipped through it carefully. "I used to watch you, you know," she said quietly. "Every morning out there, shoveling snow before school, while your parents' cars sat warm in the garage. Every evening, hauling groceries in while they watched TV." She found what she was looking for and turned the album toward me. Photos, dozens of them. Me at 16, mowing their lawn in the brutal summer heat. Me at 20, up on their roof patching shingles. Me at 25, loading furniture into a truck during their last move. I started taking these because someone should remember what you did for them, even if they wouldn't. My throat tightened. "Why didn't you ever say anything?" She sighed. "Same reason you didn't, I suppose. Didn't want to cause trouble. But seeing them turn on you like this..." She shook her head. "I posted some of these online this morning. Hope you don't mind." I opened Facebook on my phone. Her post was already being shared widely. "Since certain people want to talk about abandonment, here's what I witnessed for 20 years. This young woman held that family together while they gave her nothing but criticism in return. Every photo here tells a story of sacrifice they want you to forget." The comments were overwhelming. Other neighbors started sharing their own memories. Former teachers, family friends, even the mailman chimed in about how I was the only one who ever cleared the walkway in winter. But the real bombshell came that afternoon. My phone rang. Unknown number, but the area code was familiar. I answered cautiously. "Is this Kai's?" The voice was professional, careful. "Yes, this is Martha Chen from First National Bank of Ohio. I'm calling about some irregularities we've noticed in accounts connected to your parents. Given your recent public statements, we thought you should know that someone has been attempting to access accounts that appear to have your Social Security number associated with them." My blood ran cold. "What kind of accounts?" "Credit cards, primarily. Opened over the past 5 years. Were you aware of these?" I wasn't. But suddenly, so many things made sense. Their lifestyle improvements, the new cars, the vacations they posted about while claiming poverty whenever I hesitated to help. "I need to file a fraud report," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "We can help with that. We'll also need to freeze these accounts immediately." After I hung up, I sat in my car for a long time, processing this new betrayal. They hadn't just used my money. They'd used my name, my credit, my future. I drove home in a daze, but by the time I reached my apartment, the fog had lifted. In its place was something harder, clearer. I had evidence now. Real, legal evidence. That evening, I updated my blog one final time. Update: I've just discovered multiple credit accounts opened in my name without my knowledge. The same people who called me ungrateful have been stealing from me in ways I never imagined. I've filed fraud reports with the proper authorities. This is no longer just about family drama. This is about crime. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The comments section exploded. Local news picked up the story. My phone rang with requests for interviews, but the call that mattered came at 9 p.m. "Mom." I almost didn't answer, but something made me swipe, accept. How could you? Her voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. How could you destroy us like this? I didn't destroy anything, I said quietly. I just stopped letting you destroy me. We're your family. No, I said, and for the first time, I truly meant it. Family doesn't steal. Family doesn't erase. Family doesn't use love as a weapon. She was crying, now, ugly sobs that might have broken me once. What do you want? Money? An apology? What will make this stop? I want you to feel what I felt, I said. Invisible, forgotten, used, and then I want you to live with it the way I had to. I hung up before she could respond. The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday. I'd been expecting it. My family wasn't the type to go quietly into accountability. The return address was from a law firm in Columbus. With steady hands, I opened it at my kitchen table, Belle watching from her bed, as if she understood the weight of the moment. Cease and desist. Defamation. Emotional distress. Demand for damages. I actually laughed. They were suing me for emotional distress. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Within an hour, I was on the phone with legal aid. The same organization that had helped me freeze the fraudulent accounts was more than ready to assist with this. The lawyer, Jennifer Martinez, sounded like she'd been waiting her whole career for a case like this. Let me get this straight, she said. They opened credit cards in your name, used you for financial support for over a decade, and now they're suing you for defamation after you exposed them. That's the summary, yes. And you have documentation for everything you posted. Every receipt, every transfer, every screenshot. I could hear her smile through the phone. We're going to counter-sue. Fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation. They just handed us a gift by putting this in the legal system. The court date was set for 3 weeks out. In the meantime, the story had gone viral in ways I never expected. A local news station ran a segment called When Family Becomes Financial Fraud. Reddit threads dissected every detail. TikTokers made videos about toxic family dynamics using my story as an example. But the publicity wasn't what mattered. What mattered was what happened next. 2 days before the hearing, I received another call. This time from Frank. We need to meet, he said. No anger this time, just exhaustion. Why? Because Emma wants to see you. Emma, Frank's 17-year-old daughter. I'd barely had a relationship with her, another casualty of family dynamics that pushed me to the margins. But I remembered her from last Christmas, quiet like I'd been, always with a book or a script in her hands. We met at a neutral location, a Starbucks downtown. Frank looked older than his 40 years, and Emma looked like I had felt at her age. Shoulders curved inward, making herself smaller. Tell her, Frank said to his daughter. Emma glanced at him, then at me. They do it to me too, she said quietly. The money thing, the guilt thing, making me feel like I owe them for existing. My heart cracked a little. How long? Since Mom left. She pulled out her phone, showing me messages. Requests for her babysitting money. Demands that she contribute her part-time job earnings to the family. Guilt trips about being selfish if she saved for college. I've been reading your blog, she continued, and I realized I don't have to let them do to me what they did to you. Frank shifted uncomfortably. I didn't know it was this bad, he said. I mean, I knew about you, but I thought you were okay with it. You never said anything. I said plenty, I replied. You just weren't listening. He nodded slowly. The lawsuit. Mom and Dad are pushing it. I told them to drop it, but... He trailed off. But you won't stand up to them, I finished. I'm trying now, he said. I'll testify. about what I saw, what I knew. I studied his face. This was my brother, who'd gotten cars and parties and praise, while I got silence. But he was also a father, now watching his daughter head down the same path I'd walked. "Okay," I said finally, "but I'm not dropping my countersuit. I wouldn't ask you to." The day of the hearing came faster than expected. I wore my best professional outfit, the one I'd bought for job interviews, not family court. Jennifer sat beside me, organized and fierce. My parents entered with their lawyer, a tired-looking man who seemed to realize he was fighting a losing battle. Mom wouldn't look at me. Dad glared with the same dismissive anger he'd perfected over decades. What followed was 4 hours of evidence presentation. Jennifer was methodical, brilliant. Every receipt displayed. Every fraudulent account detailed. The judge's expression grew increasingly stern as the reality of financial exploitation unfolded. Then Frank testified. He was nervous, stammering at times, but he told the truth about watching me pay bills, about knowing I was excluded, about staying quiet because it benefited him. "Did your parents ever acknowledge your sister's contributions?" Jennifer asked. "No, they acted like it was her duty, like she owed them." The judge had heard enough. Not only did he dismiss my parents' lawsuit, but he also granted a restraining order against them accessing any accounts with my information. The countersuit would proceed to civil court, but the message was clear. I had won this round. As we left the courthouse, Mom finally spoke. "You've ruined us," she hissed. "Destroyed your own family." I stopped, turned, and looked her directly in the eyes. "No, I saved myself. And maybe, just maybe, I saved Emma too." 6 months later, my life looked nothing like it had before. The civil suit had settled out of court. My parents' lawyer convinced them it was better to pay restitution than face criminal charges for identity theft. The amount wasn't life-changing, but it was justice. More importantly, it was closure. I used some of the settlement in Granddad's gift to put a down payment on a small house on the outskirts of Columbus. Nothing fancy, just a 2-bedroom cottage with a big backyard for Belle and room for an art studio in the spare bedroom. The walls were mine to paint. The silence was mine to fill. The paintbrush Emma had given me that night at the disastrous party sat in a mason jar on my desk among new brushes I'd finally allowed myself to buy. Next to it was a photo she'd sent me, her on stage, performing Blanche Dubois, with a power that made my chest tight with pride. She'd gotten into Ohio State's theater program with a partial scholarship. The rest we figured out together without family drama or guilt. We talked every week now. Sometimes about theater, sometimes about boundaries, sometimes about nothing at all. She was teaching me that family could be chosen, rebuilt, redefined. Tyler visited occasionally, bringing his partner and their new baby. "You look different," he said, during his last visit. Lighter. I was. The blog had evolved into something unexpected. What started as a place to document pain had become a community for others dealing with family financial abuse. Messages poured in from people who'd never had words for what they experienced until they read mine. We called ourselves the Forgotten Funders, Jay, a name that made us laugh while acknowledging our shared pain. Frank and I were working on something. Not a relationship exactly, but not enemies either. He'd started therapy after realizing he was repeating patterns with Emma. Last month, he sent me a check repayment for that $500 from years ago, with interest. The memo line read, "Long overdue." I cashed it and donated half to a financial literacy program for young adults. Cora reached out once testing the waters with a hesitant text about maybe grabbing coffee sometime. I hadn't responded yet. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. The power to choose felt revolutionary. As for my parents, nothing. No contact, no acknowledgement, no apologies. I heard through the grapevine that they'd moved to a smaller apartment, that Dad had to go back to work, that Mom told anyone who'd listen about her ungrateful daughter. But their voices no longer reached me. I'd built walls, not out of anger, but out of self-preservation. And behind those walls, I was finally growing. On my 37th birthday, I threw myself a party. Nothing huge, just 20 people who'd shown up for me when it mattered. Jennifer came bringing her famous homemade salsa. Mrs. Patterson brought a photo album this time, filled with pictures of me from the past year. Smiling, painting, living. Emma performed a monologue she'd written about choosing your own family. There wasn't a dry eye in my little living room. As everyone sang happy birthday, I looked around at faces lit by 37 candles, one for each year, including all the ones that had been forgotten. The cake was a simple vanilla with buttercream frosting, store-bought, but perfect. Make a wish, Emma said, grinning. I closed my eyes, but for the first time in my life, I couldn't think of anything to wish for. Everything I needed was already here, built by my own hands, chosen by my own heart. So instead, I made a promise to never again make myself small, for people who needed me to shrink so they could feel tall, to take up space, to use my voice, to remember that love isn't supposed to come with a price tag. I blew out the candles in one breath. Everyone cheered. Belle barked excitedly, wearing the ridiculous party hat Emma had insisted on. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were done, I sat on my back porch with a cup of tea. The spring air was warm, carrying the scent of blooming lilacs from the neighbor's yard. Belle lay at my feet, content, and snoring softly. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. No demanding texts, no guilt trips, no requests for money. Just peaceful, blissful quiet. I thought about that bitter mug. One day, you'll thank me still packed away, somewhere in a box I'd never open again. Mom had been right about one thing. I was thankful. Thankful she'd shown me exactly what I didn't want to become. Thankful that in trying to break me, she'd forced me to become unbreakable. A shooting star streaked across the sky. I didn't make a wish. I was finally completely free. Sometimes, the family we're born into teaches us the most valuable lesson of all: how to recognize the family we're meant to find. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your peace? I'd love to hear your story in the comments below.